Let me welcome in our guests. Joining us for this discussion today, we've got Subhash Garg, former Finance Secretary, Ajay Srivastava, CEO, Dimensions Consulting, and Prateek Agrawal, CIO, ASK Investment Managers. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Before we dive in, Siddharth, this has been the most widely anticipated IPO, not just for meeting the government's or contributing to its divestment target, for the fact that it's going to be a major listing on the exchange.
Absolutely, Abha. You know, I never believed till a few years back that you could even do an IPO for LIC, and I believe it's the change that we have seen in terms of the approach towards this investment, and getting a behemoth up ready for listing, 650 plus pages, a wealth of information, Abha, is absolutely spectacular.
Well, let's take a look at some of the numbers, because one of the most talked about numbers, of course, is that of the embedded value. And there are a lot of different kinds of permutations and combinations that are being looked at currently. As Siddharth mentioned, a 600-page document, and after going through it, analysts have come up with a whole series of possible scenarios. Now, we're looking at an embedded valuation which is currently, at the moment, if we take a look at around 5 lakhs, 1.5 times would be about 8 lakh crores. That's possibility one. Second possibility, if it's 2 times, would be about 10.8 lakh crores. Remember, the issue size would be 5% of this. 2.5 times would make it 13.5 lakh crores, and 3 times price to embedded value would be 16 lakh crores. That gives you a sense of the scale of the issue that we're looking at this time around. This is going to be a bigger IPO than we've ever seen before. It's bigger than Paytm, which we just concluded at the end of last year, and it's been compared to global giants like a Saudi Aramco and so forth. So it is something that is quite extraordinary for the Indian stock market.
Absolutely, Abha, and in fact, one of the key things that we all need to keep into account is not just the size of the IPO, but the levels of participation. And I want to begin with you, Ajay Srivastava. You must have seen some of the fine print. Tell us what it really means, not just for individual investors, but in terms of what has been happening in the markets. 10 lakh crore of investor wealth wiped out over 2 trading sessions, and now we have this massive IPO, what we are calling the Great Indian IPO. Ajay.
I think it's going to be a great challenge for the IPO to come in this market, given what's happening on the Ukraine front, oil front, our local economy, all put together. And it's all a function of how they price the IPO, because that's more important, because this is basically it's a PS. We can be I'll be honest to say I will buy the shares in all my portfolio for the retail side. But as an investment thesis, this is a PSU competing in a very, very competitive market in India. And we have seen the last 1 year has not been the best for most insurance companies. So therefore, one looks at a longer term scenario. How can a PSU compete in a scenario that there are so many private players? It's a big question mark on the investment. What's going to happen to this company, valuation, and so on and so forth. So I think there are lots of plays happening here in terms of where this company is going to go, because given the experience what we have with the other PSUs, even their monopolies, they're not doing so well. They are bought for basically dividend by everybody. LIC will not be giving any major dividend because they have an issue which we'll discuss as the program goes along. It cannot give any major dividends as time goes by, because it needs to give at this point in time for the shareholders and for its own reserves.
And last 2 years, Ajay, the dividend has gone into shoring up the equity base.
Correct. So there's a bonus issue kind of stuff which has happened to the dividend. That's why the shares are 632 crore shares in the company. So therefore, as an investor, if I'm buying a PSU share, leave aside the thing about LIC, it's a PSU at the end of the day. And not much has changed in terms of the governing structure of PSUs, the talent pool that they have, the salary structure that they have. So when they compete, will they give us value? And I think I'm hopeful they'll give us value, but somehow or the other, the sinking feeling about BSNL, MTNL, who had monopoly, keeps coming back to haunt me, that I hope it is not that. For the country's sake, we will all subscribe to the shares upfront, but for the future, I think a lot depends upon how LIC responds to competition. Well, we all keeping our fingers crossed. We wish it well, but trepidation is there that such a large IPO in this market, will it become a Reliance Petroleum? I hope not.
Well, at least you've sounded all the warning bells as well, Ajay. It's important to do that. Prateek, let me come to you. What about the embedded value? Let's talk about that. We've seen an increase, perhaps because of the way it's changed how it shares profits with policyholders and shareholders. What do you make of the kind of valuation we're possibly looking at and the kind of interest it's likely to attract? I mean, how is this going to impact secondary markets?
No, so at any given point in time, a large IPO does suck in liquidity from the secondary markets. People have to make space for it. It is a large IPO, it's an attractive IPO, they're growing well, they command a dominant market share, and as of now what the sense is, it's being priced quite okay as well. So people will make space for it in their portfolios, which then means that they have to sell something that they are holding, and secondary market sees some amount of pressure. So that's the near term. However, what also happens is that such an IPO will bring in another crop of new investors into the market, and the momentum of new first-time investors into the market could see an acceleration. That, to my mind, is a structurally good thing to happen. We as an economy have a very small representation of retail in the market. That could expand. If I go back into history, something like that happened when the Maruti IPO happened. And while yes, in the near term it caused some amount of ripple, but medium to long term, that was the point from which the market started to do well. The same could happen this time around. Keeping fingers crossed, such a large IPO, it should happen successfully, it should list successfully, so that people who are coming into the market for the first time experience some positivity, and that could help the market in a big manner. It is not only LIC, it is also an NSE issue which should be happening, and yes, till it happens, like I said before, it's one of the points which the markets have to digest. The markets following the earnings kind of thing that we always talk about would happen only after such large issuances have been digested.
Right.